Okay, today we're going to do Unit 1, Section 3B, Solving Inequalities Using Multiplication and Division. Always remember that you can pause these. Nobody knows when you pause them, so feel free to pause. There's one big idea when you're solving inequalities with multiplication and division. And here's the big idea. When dividing or multiplying both sides of an inequality by a negative number, you must reverse the inequality symbol. And this is hard to remember. Okay, so we're going to do everything like we did equations, but the big key here that you cannot forget is to always check to see if we're multiplying or dividing by a negative number, because if we do, we must reverse the inequality symbol. Here's the reason for those of you who need to know why. Let's write an inequality that's true. 2 is less than 4. That's true. Now let's divide both sides by negative 2. This is a legal move in algebra, right? As long as we do it to one side, we got to do it to the other. So let's see what happens. We end up 2 divided by negative 2 is negative 1, and 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. Is negative 1 less than negative 2? Well, if you're not sure, let's pull out our number line. And let's put our 0, and then it's negative 1, negative 2. Well, which one's smaller? Which one's further left? The negative 2 is. So as you notice, if we keep the symbol the same, our inequality is no longer true. When mathematicians realize that any time you multiply or divide by negative on both sides, you have to flip the symbol, because that reverses what's going on. Okay, this is just for those of you who kind of need to know the why behind the reversing of the symbol. Okay, and you can try this with a bunch of different numbers, and you'll see every time it's going to come out false, and you have to flip the symbol to make it true. Okay, so let's just try a couple of examples. I think I only have 3 today, so this won't even be a long assignment. So our first example is 2x is greater than 4. Okay, so let's start with drawing our line so we know which side is which. Let's ask our question. What wants to be alone? Okay, in this case, I hope you know already, x wants to be alone. Okay, what is crowding and the operation? That's going to be key here. If you don't think of the operation, you're not going to do it correctly. So what's crowding it? Well, it's a multiply by 2. So we have to do the opposite. And so the opposite is to divide by 2. And remember, we have to do that to both sides. So we're going to divide both sides by 2. Again, I don't want to see that little dot with I don't want to see the line with the 2 dots. That's just not algebraic. Now remember, the whole reason we did this is because 2 over 2 equals 1, and that takes care of that. And so we're left with an x. Don't forget, this is an inequality. That's why I'm using a dashed line. So I remember that I don't put an equal sign. And then 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now, just like with what we did with adding and subtracting, we have to do a number line. And it's going to be the same idea. We draw our number line, we put 2 in the middle, and then we put the numbers that are either side of it. So we have a 1, 2, and a 3. Now we have to decide, open or close circle. So we look at the inequality and we look to see if there's the line underneath. If there is no line, it's open. So I'm going to put an open circle at 2. Now this says x is greater than 2. So we need to find a number that's greater than 2. So in this case, is it 1 or is it 3? Well, 3 is greater than 2, so that's the direction I point my arrow. Okay? Hopefully if you were struggling with that, you got some help yesterday. If you're still struggling, ask again. Just keep asking until you get it under control. It's no big deal to keep asking. What I don't want you to do is sit there and then on the test day be like, I don't know how to do this. Okay, I need you to ask in class. Okay, let's try another one. Number 2. Now we have some fractions. We're not afraid of fractions. We know how to deal with them. 1/2 is less than or equal -3/4 x. There's a lot going on here, so you got to take your time and ask your questions. Don't shut down because they're fractions. We can deal with them. Remember, fractions are our friends, but they're the kind of friends we want to move along as quickly as possible. They talk a lot. So we're going to do something to get rid of those fractions as quickly as possible. Well, what needs to be alone is our x. But here, remember, as soon as we see a fraction, you should think of that big R word. That big R word, and you really need to learn it because it's a good math term, is reciprocal. I think I spelled it reciprocal. Okay? Yep, I spelled it right. All right, so the reciprocal. What does that mean? We're going to flip it over. So what's the reciprocal of -3/4 is 4 over -3. Or you can put the negative up top. It's up to you. So remember, what we do with this is we rewrite the problem so we have room. 1/2. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? My dotted line. I noticed the dotted line helps me remember that we're dealing with an inequality. Is less than or equal to -3/4 x. So we now know we're going to multiply both sides by -4/3. Notice I moved the negative to the top. I can do that. I don't like my negatives in the denominator. I like my negatives in the numerator, so that's where I usually move them. But whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other side. And you don't have to put it in parentheses like I did. I just did. Okay. Now, you can either use your calculator like I showed you the other day, or you can just do top times top. So top times top, -4, numerator times numerator, -4 times -1 is -4. And then we can do denominator times denominator, which means bottom times bottom, and that's 6. And then that's less than or equal to x, because remember, this all cancels out. That's the whole reason we multiply by the reciprocal, is to make that -3/4 go away. Okay, well, the equation didn't, the fraction did go away completely. Now, if you used your calculator, you didn't get -4/6. You got the simplified version. If you did it this way and you can't figure out the simplified version, again, calculator is really cool for this. Get out your graphing calculator, put in -4, oops, the negative key, 4, divide 6, hit your math. Remember that math button is in the first column right below your alpha key, and you're going to look for frac, which is your first choice, and then you're going to hit enter, and you have to enter twice to get the answer. And that'll give you a fraction in simplified form. So if I'm doing a big problem and I have a big number and I'm not sure if it's in simplified form, I throw it in my calculator to check. And then it'll either give me the same thing back if it's already simplified, or it'll give it to me simplified. In this case, it's -2/3. Okay, so putting that on a number line for some of you may be difficult. And so you might need to look up where that would go on the number line or ask tomorrow. Well, we would have it -2/3. Now, I have people that want to put, I don't want any more fractions. What whole number is just bigger than -2/3? Well, the whole number just bigger is 0. And what whole number is just below -2/3? And that's -1. Okay? Again, I need to figure out open or closed circle, so I check to see, do I have that line? I do, so it's a closed circle. I put my closed circle. Now, it says that -2/3 is less than x. So which number here would make -2/3 smaller than the x? Well, the 0 is actually going to make this true, so we're going to point towards the 0. Again, you may have to stop and really think about this because we're in the world of negatives, okay? Let's try one more. And I don't think, no, this one comes out nice. It's not a fraction. Oh my gosh, I messed up. What did I mess up? I want you to go back, and I'm kind of glad I did, and I want you to think about what I did wrong. I want you to think about what I did at the very beginning of the lesson and what I told you to always watch out for. And see if you can find my mistake. My mistake is I multiplied both sides by -4/3. If I multiplied both sides by -4/3, what did I say at the beginning of the lesson I needed to do? I need to switch the symbol. Did I switch my symbol? Did I flip it? No, I forgot. So you can see just as easily, I forget things too. So you got to go back and double check. And so I'm going to go back and I have to flip it. It was less than. I'm now going to change it to a greater than. So I got to fix all of these. And see, I want you to realize that mistakes happen, and they happen often when you're learning something new. The key here and why I have you check your own work is learning from your mistakes. I need to remember to be more careful and to check if I multiply both sides. So that means my arrow was pointing in the wrong direction. It says that -2/3 is bigger than x, so we have to point down. Okay? You have to be very careful that you think through these problems. I made a mistake and I've been doing these problems for years. So you got to stop and you got to think carefully. All right, now let's go to number 3. I'm glad I caught my mistake. Number 3, and again, you're going to learn from my mistakes too. Number 3 is -16 is greater than or equal to -4x. Okay, I'm going to draw my dotted line so I remind myself I'm dealing with an inequality. Okay, what wants to be alone? X wants to be alone. What's going on between the -4 and the x? Multiplication. So I'm going to do the opposite on both sides. Now this time I'm going to be careful. I'm going to divide both sides by a -4. As soon as I say I'm dividing both sides by a -4, that should clue you in. If not, go back and check your work. I need to flip the inequality. So I'm going to flip it. Okay, so -4 divided by -4 just leaves us with x. Now again, if you don't know what -16 by -4 is, get out your calculator and check yourself. Okay, you're going to get faster at it, but let's make sure it's right and not just guessing. -16 divided by -4 is +4. This one's a little easier to graph, so we're going to put this on a graph because we're dealing with positives. 4 goes in the middle. I check my inequality symbol to see, do I have that line or not? I do, so it's closed. And it's set, oh, let's put our two numbers on each side. So 5 is right above 4 and 3 is right below 4. Now I need to decide. It says that 4 is less than or equal to x. So 4 is the smaller number. That means the arrow needs to go where it's bigger. 5 is bigger, so we're going to point that direction, larger. Okay? Again, if you're still having trouble with the arrows, please let me know because I'm just explaining it once to you. And you may have some questions and need to go over some more, and we can go over as many as you need to till you get it, okay? And again, notice, learn from your mistakes. That's why I'm asking you to check your work on your own, so that maybe if you can go back and find your mistake, you're less likely to make it. Does that mean you're going to be perfect all the time? No, I've done these problems many, many times, and I forgot to flip the symbol in number 2. So again, be very careful and go back and think about every step and what you're doing.